Hi all, this is Once and Future Gamer and welcome to another Pokemon challenge. Last time was a run through Pokemon Emerald with a single Chimecho, a run that was a nice and pleasant one for the festive times. Now, as we approach the dawn of the year 2024, let's do the final challenge of the year, head to Kalos and see if we can beat Pokemon Y with just a single Riolu. We are mono fighting type and we have a 285 base stat total, with the bulk of that being in attack and speed. Well, I can work with that. The rest of our stats are low, but given this is a baby Pokemon, I don't suppose I can complain too much. We've got the same base stat total as Chingling, Morlul and Paris, and I'd argue that we are the best of those four. The pre-evolved form of what I used last time, and something I do have a plan to use in the very near future. We are weak to flying, psychic and fairy type moves. We resist rock, bug and dark. Move wise, we don't really get much via our level up learn set. I am aiming to be more of a physical attacker. Force Palm will be useful for a time, but we do get better moves. If we were going the special route, Nasty Plot would be nice, but we're not. I think with the TMs, that's when we're going to get the best of our moves, since we get moves such as Bulk Up, Earthquake, Return, Dig, Brick Break, Rock Tomb and Slide, Poison Jab, Shadow Claw, Bulldoze, Swords Dance and probably my favourite fighting type move of all time in Power Up Punch. The rules are on the screen throughout. As always, if you do enjoy what you see, then like, subscribe and ring that bell. I've been saying since the middle of the year that I wanted to hit 300 subs before the end of the year, and we will soon see if I made it or not. So then, I used the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to replace Chespin with Riolu, since that will give Serena Delphox, which is probably the far and away hardest for us to fight on the surface. Well, apart from when you consider that we get both rock and ground coverage, but yeah, we are probably going to get messed up if we get hit. As I go through this video, I'm going to be recapping the year, I'm going to be talking about what I played across the year, and also about what was going on in my personal life at the time of it. Well, from what I can recall anyway, the times and the dates may not be entirely accurate, but for cathartic purposes I need to probably do it, especially some of what went off. I nicknamed our Riolu Van Damme, why not? Eventually anyway. We have the quiet nature, so less speed and more special attack. Well, thanks a bunch for that. I don't think that does us any sort of favours whatsoever. Cheers, game. Mind you, I've done this game with worse natures. Farfetch'd with a modest nature, anyone? That wasn't fun. I don't think it'll be an issue. Also, Inner Focus has an ability, so no flinching, which could be very useful. I even do my super training before the first fight, which is versus Shauna, and she picks the starter that is weak to yours. I think this might be the first time that this happens in Pokemon history. I EV trained attack and speed because those will be the two most useful stats for us. We are going to be quite squishy though, which is something that we are just going to have to deal with. The Froakie isn't an issue even slightly. We can take it out in 3 quick attacks. We're on the road then, and the first major fight is the Bug Gym, which probably won't be easy since they resist our stab, even if we do get a fighting move before then. Vivian quad resists our fighting moves, and if it does have a flying move, which I can't remember if it does or not, we are going to be at a disadvantage, so it is time to get training before our fight with Viola. Let's talk about that fight with the first gym leader. Viola is probably going to be rough, I can feel it. I can already tell her Vivian is going to be annoying for sure. Surskit probably won't be an issue, but her Ace won't be fun. It's actually quite a decent Pokemon for this stage in the game and has decent stats, as I found out a few months back when I took on this very game with that very Pokemon. Surskit does go down to 2 quick attacks, which is massive. It only hits us with a quick attack of its own, which doesn't do too much damage, and as a result, we take it out. Vivian though, as predicted, is particularly bad, as our quick attacks don't hurt it too much, and although we do eventually chip it down to low health, she heals it. Worse, her signature move, Infestation, does damage over time, and as a result, we are slowly getting worn down by the damage, which is never an entirely pleasant thing. Minus a good way of hurting it, it's a slow way to lose, and so level 15 probably wasn't enough to gain a victory here. I think we need to train up, so while I go and grind, let's get the yearly recap started. So then, January 2023 saw me still playing Pokemon Violet and Skyward Sword from the previous year. Yeah, the Switch was getting some hammering at that point. Oh, and Resident Evil 1 Remake too. Wow, was that in January? That's gone really quick. Oh, and I finished off my Let's Go Pikachu playthrough too. January was a busy month. I started doing themed ones for the Pokemon challenges too, so January was Starter Pokemon month since it was the start of the year. We started with the third games with the OG Starter Pokemon. Crystal with Bulbasaur, Emerald with Charmander, Platinum with Squirtle. And then rounded out the month with the only Oras challenge I've done to date, as I took on Alpha Sapphire with a single Tepig. The Alpha Sapphire one was probably the hardest of that month. Personal life was good too. I went house sitting with the girlfriend at the start of the month. I enjoyed those few days with her, dog sitting, a great day. We'd gotten together and gone relationship official on the 18th of December after about 6 weeks of dating. Had a night together in a hotel in Leeds where I went to the Christmas market. We had a plan of going for a few drinks, visit the Christmas market, then go for a nice meal. How it actually turned out was that we had way too much to drink. We still visited the Christmas market and then, rather than going out for a meal, ordered about £50 worth of McDonald's and KFC and went back to the hotel room and had an early night. I love that story. I get to level 19 and then go to tackle Viola again, confident that we can do a better job of it. I think if we can get her to burn the potion earlier, we'll have more fortune. So, we need to mess Surskit up slightly more without fainting it. Risky, but we can do this for sure. Surskit is a 2-hit with quick attack again, but we do enough damage this time to make her use the potion, so mission accomplished there. Plus, on the turn when she could attack, she only went for water sports, so we're at full health going into Vivian. We are doing so much better this time. Our quick attacks are doing more damage, and though we do get hurt somewhat, we can soon bring the bug down with 3 quick attacks. And I do not think we're going to have issues for the very immediate future now. That's the first real obstacle out of the way. Mind you, it's not too long after when we do have to fight Professor Sycamore, and I don't really call him a massive issue. Not with how we've usually had to train up for the first gym. We are ready to hit him hard. He uses the Kanto starters in their first form and they're really not intimidating at this point, so let's go and fight him. It's unsettling that in X and Y you can get the TMs for both Bulldoze and Swords Dance at this point amongst others. I mean, you probably won't be able to buy both of them at the same time at this point, but we did go and get Bulldoze and it wrecks Bulbasaur out first. Squirtle does survive Bulldoze, which is annoying, but Tackle doesn't really hurt us and we take it out with Quick Attack, before Charmander is last and we go for Bulldoze. The really funny thing about using the Universal Pokemon Randomizer in this game is that after this fight, Sycamore is supposed to give you a Kanto starter, but it randomly gets changed when this happens. So, in this instance, instead of Bulbasaur, Charmander and Squirtle, it's a choice of female Nidoran, Rhyhorn and Bulbasaur. Weird, right? I mean, I have no idea which one to take, so I eventually go for the Nidoran and choose to leave as soon as we're done with the exposition. On the road again then, and we are at February 2023, and there was more Skyward Sword. I did finish up with Pokemon Violet for the time being, and I loved that game. I never had any sort of major technical issues with the game like some people did. Hey, I'm writing this in early December. The second set of DLC is probably on the channel by the time you hear this. Recording OAFG says, yes it is, we're a few episodes in. Also, I think I gave up on Pokemon Insurgents at this point. Not because I didn't like it, but because I couldn't get back into it after stopping for Pokemon Violet, I think. And I also began a playthrough of Pokemon Gold Unova. I did also complete my playthrough of Resident Evil 1 Remake, and I absolutely love that game with a passion. One of my favourites in that series for sure. And I also began a playthrough of Hogwarts Legacy towards the back end of the month. In terms of challenges, I did a rock type themed month. I had the 75th challenge I did at this point when I was still doing one a week. We had White 2 with Onyx and Geodude, which was pretty brutal. We had Pokemon Yellow with Kabuto, not so bad. Pokemon Emerald with Sudowoodo, and Pokemon Fire Red with a single nose pass, neither of which were actually as bad as you might think. I actually think the hardest one here was the Onyx and Geodude one for sure. Meanwhile, we started to plan a holiday. I think it was about this time, or at least we started to figure out that we wanted to do something. We also did Valentine's Day. We went to a TGI's that was underwhelming. I wanted a steak and ribs and they'd run out of both, which not ideal. Oh, and on the same day we went to see the movie Cocaine Bear, which great experience apart from the cinema getting evacuated about 2 minutes in, which they could at least have stopped the movie, that's all I'm going to say. Not long after, we have the double battle with Trevor and Tierno, where we have to team up with Serena, and this is never particularly hard. I'm trying to think where the next real obstacle might come from, and I'm thinking it will probably be the Tower of Mastery rival fight. But even then, maybe not. We shouldn't struggle with the Rock Gym for sure. We can bulldoze our way through Trevor and Tierno. We strike down the Pikachu with the move, no problem. But the Corphish does survive, though thanks to the efforts from Serena's Tailo and it using Quick Attack, it does weaken both Corphish and Flabebe to the point that another bulldoze on the next turn does take them both out of the equation and we take the victory. I realise I wrote Tailo in the script there, but I'm pretty sure it's a Fletchling. Oh well. Rock type gym then, and I really am not worried about this even slightly. There can be a few issues with Grant, especially with his Amora having Thunder Wave and the stun locking Tyrant. We've got a quad super effective move against Amora and we are immune to flinching, so he can just bring it. I eventually climb to the top of his mountain, I face off with him, and when he sends out the Amora, we strike it with a Force Palm, and with it being 4 times weak to fighting, we just fold it hard. The second Pokemon is Tyrant, and we strike it with Bulldoze because I'm not sure if we are going to one-hit it or not. I know it likes to go for Rock too. So, we lower its speed with Bulldoze before it lowers our speed with Rock 2. And then we finish that off with Force Palm. 2 badges down. While we're walking towards Shallow City, let's talk about what happened in March 2023. I began a playthrough of Resident Evil 2 Remake on the first day of the month and carried on with it. Well, uploaded it and I'll say that, I can't remember when I played it. Still was doing Gold Unova, still was doing Skyward Sword, and as I'm going through my YouTube content list to see what was done in each month, I remember the boss at the end of the Ancient Cistern and how angry I got during that fight. Oh, I could talk for ages about what I didn't like about Skyward Sword. But yeah, RE2 Remake, Gold Unova, Hogwarts Legacy, Skyward Sword. That's what I was doing in the month of March. The challenge month was bird Pokemon themed, and we began with Pokemon Silver with Pidgey, carried on with Pokemon Emerald with Tailo, Pokemon Black with Rufflet, and finished with Pokemon Platinum with Murkrow. I think the hardest here was either the Tailo or the Rufflet one. I think it might have been the Rufflet one, now I consider it. Sheer Force as an ability didn't do us a whole lot of favours for my normal tactics in that game. And while me and my girlfriend were deciding on the holiday, we ended up picking Dubrovnik in Croatia. After going through Reflecting Cave, we end up in Shallow City, and the first thing we have to do is head to the Tower of Mastery, and we have the fight with Serena to get out of the way. This is probably, potentially, going to be an obstacle, but once this is out of the way, we can head to the gym and get our power-up punch, which is going to make the rest of the game that bit more fun. So, Serena then. This actually goes badly, as she has 2 psychic types, and we can't entirely hit her for decent damage. We are at least immune to Fake Out from Meowstic, but it is a free hit knockout, taking a Rock Tomb and 2 Bulldoze attacks before we bring it down. We have the Eviolite on, and we have to survive a Psybeam from Meowstic. Breakson survives Bulldoze on a sliver and hits us with a Psybeam, but we survive on 2 HP, which is lucky as we bring it down. But it's to no avail as we get hit with a priority quick attack from Absol and we lose the fight. I try again, and this time I have something a little different in mind for the Meowstic fight. We have picked up the Shadow Claw TM and we can reuse TMs in this game. So let us see if we can mess her up with this attack. It has a high crit rate too, so maybe it'll work a bit better than the moves we've used otherwise. Meowstic doesn't go for Fake Out this time, it doesn't attack us at all and only goes for Light Screen. But we take it out with 2 Shadow Claws. Breakson does hurt us with Fire Spin, but nowhere near as much as if it had been a Psybeam, and 2 Shadow Claws can take it out hard for the knockout. Last is Absol, and a Force Palm is enough to beat that down hard and give us the win. Fighting type trainer Karina is next, and I'll have to look at what I have TM wise to up the ante against her, since we are going to be operating at a disadvantage against her Hawlucha. So I probably need more power, that's for sure, and how true that's going to be. I wish we could learn Aerial Ace, but that's not to be. Mienfoo isn't a big problem. We strike it with a single poison jab and drop it hard to give it a knockout. Hawlucha is next though. It is faster, and although we hit that with a crit poison jab, it's not enough to bring it down, and 2 Flying Press attacks take us down for the count, and that is worrying. We seem to be taking a lot of losses at the moment because I lost a bunch of times in the Reflecting Cave too. Maybe I should grind a bit, seems like a plan. I go and train up to level 50 and then come back. I don't know if this will make a difference. I didn't think that the fighting gym would be the one to cause us problems. Well, problems may be pushing it as a description, I think. Anyway, we get tagged with Fake Out from Mienfoo, but it doesn't do much before we drop it with Shadow Claw to give us a quick knockout at the start. The Hawlucha is next, and at least this time we are faster than it, so that's massive. Poison Jab does about 2/3 of its health. We do get hit with a Flying Press, but we tank it thanks to the Eviolite that we're holding. And then we drop it with another Poison Jab. Machoke survives Poison Jab on red health and then goes for Leah. Okay, we hit a quick attack, but she heals. Our quick attack does a surprising amount of damage, probably about 1/3 give or take, and then we finish Machoke with another Poison Jab for 3 badges. As we head back to the Tower of Mastery for the mandatory Lucario fight that I can't get out of doing, let's talk about April 2023. The playthroughs of Hogwarts Legacy, Skyward Sword, Gold Unova and Rari 2 Remake carried on. I did drop an episode of a playthrough of Spyro 2, Ripto's Revenge, but I've not been consistently doing that. I suppose I should go back to it at some point, I guess. We had Rodent Month in terms of challenges, and it began with Pokemon Silver with a single Sandshrew, the second part of a Johto double header as I took on Pokemon Heart Gold with a single Buneary, Pokemon Yellow with Rattata, Pokemon Platinum with Pachirisu, and Pokemon Black with Minccino. I don't recall which one was the hardest here, probably Pokemon Platinum with hindsight. With Croatia paid for, there was planning, ready to go at the end of May. But yeah, everything was good. Still happy, was looking forward to that week together. Just the 2 of us, no distractions. It was both of our birthdays within about 10 days of each other, so we had a joint meal which was absolutely banging, and went to see the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Great times. We've got a rival fight outside the Kura Main City gym, and I've said it before about the weird pacing of the story in this game. I'm not too worried about this fight with Serena, since I've got that prior knowledge from before and I can certainly do something with it. She didn't learn from the previous encounter, and Meowstic tries to hit us with Fake Out. It doesn't stop us, and since we've got a free turn, we clock it with a power-up punch for minimal damage but massive effect, as we then follow up with a Shadow Claw to metaphorically disembowel it. Interesting image, I know, for a Pokemon game. Braixen doesn't survive a Shadow Claw either. We slash through it and take it down in pretty swift fashion before Absol is last, and although it hits quick attack for a surprising amount of damage, our power-up punch wrecks it and we move into the gym. I'm really not concerned about Ramos. Really not. He is not hard at the best of times, and so this should be a pretty simple fight. I know people say X and Y aren't the hardest of games, but I'd say Ramos is probably the easiest of all the gym leaders. Even Viola has the capacity to be harder, especially in solo runs if you don't have the tools to make that Vivian simpler. The fight with the grass-type gym leader is pretty much a one-shot sweep through, as we tear through his entire team with Poison Jab, striking the move hard and accurate. We break down Jumpluff with the move, before doing the same to Go-Goat, and finally, Weeping Bell goes down as well. Didn't even have to heal before going into the fight, 4 badges down. Let's talk about what happened next in the year. In May 2023, I completed the playthroughs of RE2 Remake, or at least the initial one anyway, see more later, and Skyward Sword, which I had started several months earlier. In the previous year, in fact. I do like the story of Skyward Sword. The combat and controls I'm less keen on. We began a playthrough of Resident Evil 4 Remake and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, as well as carrying on with Gold Unova and Hogwarts Legacy. Pokemon challenge wise, I did a second chance month, doing Pokemon Emerald with Aaron, Pokemon White 2 with Pidove, and Pokemon Fire Red with Pikachu. I always intended to only do 3 that month because I was going away. None of these were particularly easy, but the Aaron one was probably the easiest of the 3, so that should give you an idea about the other 2. If a Pokemon has that many weaknesses and was probably still the easiest, it should tell you a bit about how bad the other 2 were. The Pikachu one was probably the hardest. The Pidove one wasn't pleasant, but it was probably just about a bit more manageable than the Pikachu one. And yep, went abroad for the first time in years, had a lovely time. Was on an island about 25 minutes from Dubrovnik, all nice and pleasant, was warm, had a lovely time. We even went over the border a few times. Once to Montenegro, once to Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was a fantastic week. We saw where they filmed King's Landing in Game of Thrones. They also filmed the Canto Bight stuff in The Last Jedi there too, so massive geek cred. Genuinely one of the happiest weeks of my entire life. Anyway, the electric gym is next, and this fight does have the potential to be somewhat problematic. But I'm not worried too much, it's just usual electric gym stuff. The concern about paralysis mainly. Emolga will probably be the worst, but I don't think his Magneton has Thunder Wave, so that will make it that little bit simpler. Let's take on Clement. It mostly goes without issue as we fling a Rock Tomb at Emolga. I love being able to change our movesets at will with reusable TMs before we then face Magneton, and we hit this Steel type with a quick attack. Why, you may ask? Simply to break the sturdy. It blasts us with Thunderbolt for decent damage, and that wasn't in my plan. I was expecting electric terrain, but with it vulnerable to the kill shot, we drop it with the quad effective Bulldoze. Heliolisk is last, and we take it down with Power Up Punch for the 5th badge. I do want to use Helioptile in a Gen 6 challenge at some point, just saying. I'll mention the next Serena fight while I'm here, since there is one almost immediately after, and again, if she hasn't learned from our previous encounters, which I don't think she is capable of, this shouldn't be an issue. Can you imagine if they did do a Pokemon game where the rival did adapt to what you did in previous fights? I don't know how close or far away from that outcome we are. Actually, anyway, it does play out differently. Meowstic doesn't go for Fake Out this time when we hit the Power Up Punch and strikes Disarming Voice instead. It doesn't really hurt us though, and we take her out on the next turn with a Shadow Claw. Delphox is next, and a Shadow Claw soon brings that down. The round over as soon as it began, and it's a small matter to take the Absol out with a Power Up Punch to give us a swift win over Serena. As I walk towards Lavere City, let's talk about June then, and I began Poison type month. Ironically, given what happened, and did Pokemon Yellow with a single coughing. I carried on with RE4 Remake, Ocarina of Time, Gold Unova and Hogwarts Legacy. for at least a brief period of time anyway, because I had a tooth out. Doesn't sound like much, but it got infected and I felt absolutely shocking for a few weeks, during which time I was doing Pokemon Black with a single Trubbish. That was nearly the first challenge that defeated me, not because of the difficulty, but because I was in that much pain throughout. I was eating painkillers for the entire week before I finally realised what had happened. So yeah, I nearly gave up on that challenge for that reason. I last uploaded something on the 9th of June and then vanished for a few weeks from YouTube. I think this was the point that I stopped doing weekly challenges because the stress got to be too much. I was grateful for the support that I got from my girlfriend at this time. She was my rock. Going to take this chance to quickly do some Riolu trivia. It is the only baby Pokemon that evolves into a Pokemon capable of Mega Evolution. It is a starter in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, and it became the first starter Pokemon, unable to be recruited or captured in another game of its trio, as it cannot be found in Explorers of Darkness without using Wonder Mail. There's a lot of stuff in its Pokédex entries regarding Aura. The only games where it hasn't been able to be gotten in-game since it made its Gen 4 debut are Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, where it has to be traded, and the Let's Go games where it doesn't exist, which is fair enough if you think about it. It appears to be based on the Egyptian god Anubis, particularly in the head, but it also may be based on a raccoon or a tanuki due to the mask-like markings on its face and its small, pointed ears. The Fairy Gym is next, and this does not worry me even slightly. I mean, it is worth remembering that we are weak to that type, but it's not like Valerie has an optimal team for sure. I mean, Mawile doesn't Mega Evolve. Mr. Mime is the sort of thing that looks great at lurking near playgrounds. Actually, that applies to Hypno too. What is it about Gen 1 Psychic types that look like they're about to abduct children? They are a bit creepy overall, let's be honest. Between Mr. Mime, Hypno and Jinx, I digress. All this banter to ignore the fact that I got completely lost in the gym. It happens, I guess. See my comments about the Fire Gym in Hoenn for similar thoughts. Mawile is first. We clump it with 2 power-up punches to break it down hard, which is something that wasn't unexpected. I wondered if it would go for the Iron Defense stall, but it didn't. Anyway, we've got boosted attack going into Mr. Mime, and we poison jab it for an immediate win, making the children of Lavere City that bit safer for a while, before we poison jab Sylveon for a win, and that gives us 6 badges. July came and I uploaded a lot of Resident Evil 4 Remake at that point. There were like 14 consecutive episodes of it, and I finished it at the same time that month. And what a game that was for sure. Probably one of the best games I've ever played. As well as some Gold Unova, and I also began playing Star Wars Jedi Survivor, because if nothing else, I clearly like to stick to one game at a time. I did upload the Trubbish challenge at the start of the month. I ignored the themes from then on out, but I did have the thumbnails, so I wanted to use what I'd made. I did Emerald with Gulpin and Platinum with Skorupi. I shouldn't need to say that the Trubbish one was the hardest for that point. We also began to think about taking another holiday since the last one had gone so well, and given we lived a bit of a distance apart, any sort of duration of time together was nice. We also briefly began to talk about going to a different Christmas market in December after the last one had been such a success. At this point, I was seriously thinking about the future, about moving in with her, about asking her to marry me. I'd thought of taking her back to Croatia, doing it on that island. That's exactly what I would have done. You might be able to guess where this is going by the choice of words there. There is a rival fight before we can enter the Psychic Gym, and we have shot our level up drastically due to a few fights that we were struggling to beat in the Ice Cave. Yeah, believe it or not. So I went and did some training in the Battle Chateau. I even made it to Duke rank. Anyway, Serena. So, she didn't remember the lessons from last time. She goes for Fake Out, which again doesn't bother us slightly. We tag Meowstic with a power-up punch and then a Shadow Claw to give the old 1-2 knockout. Next is Delphox, and we slash into it with Shadow Claw to take it out. Jolteon goes down to Bulldoze, which, not surprising, before we take the Absol down with a power-up punch for the win. and we can move into the gym. Sidekick isn't a great type for us, but I think we should be able to hit them hard enough that being weak to their moves isn't going to be too much of a problem. And if I don't say that with a certain degree of optimism, then something is wrong somewhere for sure. Olympia has the potential to be difficult, so let's see how we do. Well, the answer is somewhat surprising. We face Sigilif and strike it down with a Shadow Claw, so that's not something that actually turned out to be an issue. Slowking might, but nope, we go straight through it with Shadow Claw before the last Pokemon is Meowstic. Olympia makes the same mistake as Serena has throughout. She goes for Fake Out, we ignore it and carve up the Meowstic with Shadow Claw to give ourselves a win and the 7th badge. We head back to Lumio City now because we've got to talk about August 2023. There was a lot more Jedi Survivor, quite an engrossing game, but I'm not sure I played it particularly well for a YouTube playthrough. But yeah, I finished it, loved it. Don't know if it was better than the first one or not, but definitely a good one. I did finish up my Hogwarts Legacy playthrough. Well, cancelled might be a better word. I picked back up with Ocarina of Time for the first time in a while. Challenge-wise, I did Pokemon Y with a single Vivian and Pokemon Fire Red with a single Spinarak. Definitely, the latter one was the hardest there for sure. Vivian is actually quite good. We decided that at the end of September we'd go to a caravan in Newquay for the holiday. Every year she did that with her parents. It was something already planned, so I got invited to tag along. There is a Lysander fight not too far away, and we have to fight him a few times in short order, which is quite possibly a few more issues with the pacing of the story. I don't really want to keep on dying on this hill. Anyway, he begins with Mean Foo and it survives our power up punch, but that's not a problem, as even though we get hit with high jump kick, we shrug it off and take it out with another PU punch. I might call it that from now on. Murkrow goes down to PU punch and we are at +3 in attack going into the fight with Gyarados. Believe it or not, I forgot he had this, but it just dies to Poison Jab despite the Intimidate. I may need to adapt my moveset for his later fights. Last is Pyro and we down it with PU Punch to give us victory number 1 against him. It's not long before there is another Lysander fight in very short order, because thanks to the pacing of this game we have to fight him a bunch of times very quickly, and I think it's safe to say that he gets progressively harder in that short space of time. Maybe he was force feeding his team rare candies. Actually, I think it's safe to say that's exactly what he was doing. Anyway, Mienshao hits us really freaking hard with acrobatics, but we take it out with 2 PU punches for a victory, and we're getting stronger every time we hit. Honchkrow also goes down to a PU punch before the next fight is versus Gyarados, and even with the Intimidate we are strong enough to lay it out with a Rock too. That's a relief. Next opponent is Pyro, and once again we can take it out with PU punch for a victory. Final fight is the one where we have got to let him punch himself out on Yveltal before we can actually get Van Damme in there. I am not switching into an attack just because the game developers decided they wanted to force you to use the legendary in this fight. I do really like Gen 6, but I also have some huge issues with some of the choices they made. Anyway, when Mienshao finally takes Yveltal out, Van Damme comes in. We do hit Mienshao hard with PU punch and then get one shot with high jump kick, thanks to it having swords danced earlier. Let's go fight him again in the true spirit of the challenge. This time we only have our Riolu, so we are going to do this the way I want this to go, not the game developers. We're going to fight him fairly. I know it's a bit strange describing 1 versus 4 as a fair fight, but I digress. Anyway, as the fight begins, we strike a PU punch on Mienshao, and then, thanks to it not swords dancing this time, we survive the high jump kick. We don't survive it well, but we can take the fighting type out with another PU punch. We PU punch Honchkrow into oblivion and take that down, and then, because he sends Pyro out third this time, we take that out as well to put us 3 up. Okay, so at the last, we've got the Mega Gyarados, and this one really isn't a problem. It goes from having a type advantage, in theory, against us, to being definitely weak to us, and a PU Punch strikes it out to give us the win. As I head towards the rival gauntlet, I'll talk about the next month, and for September, there was more Ocarina of Time, as well as a playthrough of Resident Evil 3 Remake that I began and finished in the same month, I believe, which further backs up the theory that it is not a long game. There was also the first piece of DLC for Pokemon Violet, the Teal Mask, so I did a playthrough on that because why not? Completed it, looking very much forward to the Indigo Disc to see what happens there. Remember, writing this in early December, before it had been released, I played it and hopefully completed it by this point in the future. I do not know. Pokemon challenges for this month were Emerald with Surskit and Silver with Porygon. Neither of them were really hard, I'll have to admit. Probably Surskit slightly more. But anyway, we went down to Newquay, we had a really great week, which went into the start of October, and everything was good. We tentatively agreed on doing it again the same time next year. All sounds like it's been going good so far, right? I really hate this rival gauntlet. It is so much harder than you would think. Shauna and Tierno aren't too bad, but Trevor can be really worrying at the end. I can't get Rock Slide or Earthquake until after the next gym, which is annoying, but I equip a Cherry Berry on Van Damme and get ready to fight. We have to fight the 3 of them in a row. We do get healed after the second one, but if we lose at any point, we have to start over. Shauna is first. She proves to be a truly exceptional Pokemon trainer in this fight, and I'm going to explain exactly why in just a few moments. She is probably the easiest of the 3 and begins with Delcatty. So, that's already a problem for her. We strike out with a PU Punch, and that just plain wrecks it hard. We do get afflicted with Cute Charm, but since it's already down, not a problem. Then she goes for Greninja to continue her type disadvantage, and we strike it with PU Punch for a win. And with that down, there's just Gudra left, and we take it down with a PU Punch, giving us the victory in this battle. In the second battle of the gauntlet, Tierno is next, and there's a few possible hurdles with him, which makes him harder than Shauna for sure. He begins with a Talonflame, which has Flame Body as an ability, as I've found out in the past, so being burned is a risk. Good thing we have Rock Tomb right, we drop it with that move to give us a swift win over the bird. Next is Roserade, and it survives our Poison Jab and hits Petal Dance for big damage, but we finish that off with PU Punch to put us into the fight with Crawdont. And another PU Punch wrecks it hard to give us the victory over Tierno. Trevor is last, and as I said before, is probably the hardest of the 3. Or that is my experience of him anyway. We do get healed up before this fight, so that is pretty much a good thing for sure. It gets rid of any wounds we already had. And when the fight begins, we hit Raichu with Bulldoze for a knockout, and we get out of that fight without paralysis. Bonus. Florges is next, and that would be an issue if we didn't strike it with Poison Jab for a swift win. Last is Aerodactyl, and we take it down with a Rock Tomb before it can hurt us to give us a victory, and we can move on towards the last gym. October then, and I did a Resident Evil 2 randomizer, finished up with Ocarina of Time. You know, I'm not sure how well that game has aged, you know. I did buy a Nintendo 64 controller for the Switch, but it just feels unnatural. I don't know. I do want to do another Zelda game at some point, but it's working out which one. Still a good game, but I think it feels like it hasn't aged entirely as gracefully as some. We did Resident Evil 4 Remake DLC the Separate Ways, great piece of DLC for sure. I did begin a playthrough of Fable 2, but that didn't last very long because of issues. I also began Pokemon Master Showdown at this point. It began with Ortega of Team Star versus Chase from Let's Go. There was also Pyramid King Brandon versus Tate and Liza the week after, and Gary Oak versus Trial Captain Mina the week after. I also started uploading videos where I did stuff with the TCG, opening up boxes and boosters. Challenge wise, there was Pokemon Fire Red with only bug type moves, which I wouldn't say was actually as bad as you might think it was. I think going into 2024 I do want to try and do more team runs. There was also the 100th challenge, being Pokemon White 2 with a single Charmander. I did this because my girlfriend got a tattoo of Charmander on her ankle because she knew I liked this Pokemon. So, all seems good so far, yeah? Well, the midway part of the month was the point when my entire world came crashing down, when said girlfriend broke up with me by text saying that she didn't love me anymore and that she felt trapped by the relationship. That was almost a year to the day that we went on our first date, so the last 2 months since then haven't been particularly great, and not a day hasn't gone by when I wonder if I could have done things differently over the year. I was giving the highlights throughout, but we went out plenty, spent a decent amount of time together, so it was definitely a shock. Wulfric is the next fight then, and I can't see him being much of an issue, even slightly. As long as we can hit some PU punches, we should be absolutely grand. Avalugg could probably weather one without too much trouble, but I reckon we 2-hit a Bomber Snow, and then that makes us probably ready for the rest of the fight. Anyway, my prediction versus a Bomber Snow goes great. It survives one PU punch and hits us with an energy ball before he does heal it. Our second PU punch brings the Bomber Snow down very quickly. So far, everything is going to plan. Cryogonal is next. It comes out and doesn't survive a PU punch at all. So, we are at +3 in attack as we go into Avalugg, and I am massively confident. We've been hurt throughout, the hail keeps chipping at us so we can't heal up. And then, Avalugg survives our 4th power-up punch on red health to my shock, and then takes us out with Avalanche. Well damn, that wasn't to plan. I'd boost a few levels and then come back, because that's most unfortunate. Mind you, I can see one problem if I do power up some more, but hopefully that doesn't become an issue in the slightest. I can't do it at level 90, we still take too much damage and can't one-hit Avalugg, but at level 93 we can one-hit the Avalugg with our PU punch, after landing 3 of them on a Bomber Snow and Cryogonal, so that does give us a win and our 8th badge. I go and get the TMs for Rock Slide and Earthquake before heading for Victory Road, and as I'm travelling through, let's pick up back where I left off. In November, still in somewhat of a state of shock, I finished the Fable 2 playthrough, didn't complete it for reasons I went into at the time, and began a playthrough of Pokemon Coliseum. I did more TCG stuff, I did more Master Showdown, even went back to RE2 Remake to do the second part of the playthrough. I finished it up by now, and the challenges were Crystal with Misdreavus and Yellow with Voltorb. Definitely the latter that was the hardest. I don't have much to say about what I did at this time because there isn't anything. I don't really want to go into it. Eventually, there is the final rival fight with Serena. She hasn't really been a concern for too much of the last few fights, but there's always a chance that this could be turned back around on us. Never count the chickens. I didn't think Wulfric would be an issue, and there we were. Anyway, Meowstic still hasn't learned that Fake Out does not work, and we ignore the flinch effort before clumping it with Power Up Punch for minimal damage, and then we finish that with Earthquake. Next is Delphox, and Earthquake is the order of the day once again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mind you, the next opponent is Altaria, so we have to go for Rock Slide instead to take that down, and we do so, bringing down the Cloudbird. Jolteon is 4th, and it's a return to Earthquake to end it. December then, I can't comment too much on this at the time of writing, for obvious reasons. Pokemon Coliseum, Pokemon Master Showdown, TCG stuff maybe. I've slowed that down a bit due to financial reasons, and I began a playthrough of Resident Evil 5. There was also Indigo Disc, since that came out halfway through the month. Challenges were Platinum with Kricketune, Emerald with Chimecho, and this one. Given the way things have gone with the other 2 challenges, I'm expecting Riolu to have the hardest time, but we'll see. It's not been too bad so far for sure, but we've still got the final bit of the game left to do. Regarding my personal life, still don't want to go too much into it because everything is kinda in flux, so yeah. Anyway, we make it to the Pokemon League at long last, and before we go in, here are our stats at level 97. Feels like we always go in really high leveled in this game for one fight or another near the end. Our attack is pretty good, and it's always going up if we land PU punches. Speed is decent, but the defences are pretty mediocre at best. I mean, we've seen that throughout that we're not great at taking hits. I know I said that lowered speed wasn't ideal with the nature we got at the start, but I suppose if we had a negative nature for one of our defences, we'd have really been in trouble. Let's see. Molver shouldn't be a problem. We are well set up for fighting fire types. Seabold probably shouldn't be too bad either. We're not quite as well set up for water types, but we still have some decent power and coverage. Drasna likely won't be too bad, and ditto that for Wickstrom. Probably the worst part of Wickstrom will be getting tormented by the Klefki at the start. Drasna does have some irritations on her team more than anything else, so we will have to see. Take your guesses on if we can do it at this level or not right now, folks. I'll go after Molver first, purely because I feel like she will be the easiest of the four. That's my take on this. I will stand by it. Rock and ground moves are going to clean up here for sure. So once we start landing some hits, we are going to be on easy street. Right at the start, we take the Pyro out with Earthquake. So yeah, easy fight, easy. Talonflame then outspeeds us and one hits us from full health with Brave Bird. That wasn't supposed to happen, was it? I am going to come back to Molver soon, I think, instead. So I'm going to go tackle Wickstrom at this time. I think I'll beat the other three first and then come back. Again, it goes back to my previous point about our defences being somewhat suspect. I am a bit worried that we're 3 levels off max, plus we can't outspeed something. Anyway, Wickstrom. Klefki doesn't go for Torment, which turns out to be our downfall. We hit a PU punch and then get blasted by Dazzling Gleam for massive damage, which, not good. We take it out with Earthquake, but next is Probopass, and no matter what we do, we are not going to be able to one-hit this thanks to Sturdy, and it duly survives our attack and ends us with Flash Cannon. What the heck is happening here? Drasna, I'm starting to feel a little worried, I'm not going to lie. So far, different problems have raised their heads, but it's all good tactical information for sure. The only thing I don't have a counter for at this moment is Molver, but I have an idea for Wickstrom for next time if he does the same thing. Another loss, but this one is arguably very unlucky. Versus Drasna, we take Dragalge out with an Earthquake, which is massive, before the next opponent is Altaria. It survives our Rock Slide, and thankfully, we get a flinch before I figure she'll heal. When she heals, we go for a PU punch to boost our attack, but then we miss Rock Slide and we get hit with Moonblast, which definitely not ideal. It doesn't do that much damage, but still we took the hit. We do take it out at the next attempt before Noivern is last. We miss another Rock Slide before being taken out with Air Slash. Well, nuts. I go back in, and this time I decide to right the wrong versus Wickstrom and march in to face him. Well, if Klefki isn't going to use Torment, I'll just Earthquake it. That'll solve that problem. We won't get hit with Dazzling Gleam, and we can move straight into the rest of his team. Except this time, it does use Torment, which is annoying, even as we drop it with Earthquake. Probopass survives PU Punch thanks to Sturdy. We shrug off the Flash Cannon, and when he heals, we go for a Rock Slide to break the Sturdy, and then Earthquake to finish it. This is not a great idea, as Aegislash is next, and 2 of our moves are useless. We fling Rock Slide at it, but it blocks with King's Shield before we take it out with Earthquake. Last is Scizor, and it survives our PU Punch before smiting a Mighty Blow with Iron Head, but we take it out with Rock Slide. 1 down at last. Let's go Seabold. Let's see how this one plays out. Think it shouldn't be too bad, but we will have to see, I suppose. I've given up trying to predict stuff in this bit of the challenge, given what's happened already. Seabold isn't too bad, but there are a few hairy moments over the course of this fight. He begins with Plowitzer, and it survives our PU punch, but confuses us with Water Pulse, and I figure like I could have seen that coming from a long way away. That's about par for the course, but we do eventually bring it down. We shake Confusion off and take Starmie out with Poison Jab before the Gyarados is third, and Rock Slide is enough to bring it down, even with the Intimidate. Last is Barbaracle, and it survives our PU punch before hitting us with Razor Shell. Thankfully, we do survive the move, and we can take it out very quickly with another attack to give us the victory. Woo! Let us go and try Drasna again then, and see if we can have more fortune this time. It can't be much worse than how the previous one went, surely. That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, what are the chances of Rock Slide missing twice in one fight again? I shouldn't tempt fate, should I? We take Dragalge out with Earthquake for an easy knockout, and then we miss Rock Slide on Altaria, because, of course, but at least it misses Sing. We can take it out with another Rock Slide on the next turn, getting a high damage roll. That's a relief. Noivern is next. We hit the Rock Slide and get the flinch when it does survive. So, as she's going to heal, we strike a PU punch and then Rock Slide follow up to bring it down. Drudigon survives our Earthquake on red health, but we hit 2 PU punches to bring it down after she heals it. So, we've now got another run at Malva to treat ourselves to. I really hope that we are faster this time. I hope that extra level makes a difference. Or maybe she won't go for Brave Bird. If she consistently outspeeds and one-hits us with Brave Bird, I'm not sure exactly what I can do as it stands. A few times I try and it doesn't happen, so I eventually have to rethink my strategy if I want to win this challenge. I go and get the double team TM. This is not a route I wanted to go down, but if we are not able to outspeed Talonflame, then we need to do something. I did want to use Substitute, but I couldn't get my hands on that particular TM, so let's try this. It does take a few attempts with double team, but eventually we get a run where we come out of the fight with Pyro mostly unscathed. She has Noble Roar, so the last thing we want or need is our attack getting dropped. So there is always a need for a few PU punches to get back up to strength. Pyro misses a few attacks, we get 3 double teams up, and eventually we bring it down. And this time, Talonflame misses Brave Bird, we strike the Rock Slide and bring it down. Anyway, Torkoal goes down to Earthquake before the same thing happens to Chandelure. We take it out and we have got the win just like that. I always feel looking at Chandelure it should probably have Levitate as an ability, but it doesn't, so yay. Alrighty then, Diantha. Don't know how this is going to play out. There's some Pokemon that she will have that might be a wee bit problematic, like Hawlucha and possibly Gourgeist, but I'm not worried about anything else on her team. I've made these statements before, haven't I? Let's see how this goes. It takes a few efforts for sure, as we can get messed up by Hawlucha or Gudra if things don't go to plan. I keep using Rock Slide on Hawlucha because I want that flinch. We cannot one-hit that opponent, not without a crit anyway, so we keep going until we do get an effort when Rock Slide does bring it down in one hit. We lost maybe half a dozen efforts to Flying Press. Gudra hits us with Dragon Pulse but goes down to Rock Slide and PU Punch before we get the easy knockouts. Aurorus goes down to PU Punch before the next opponent is Tyrantrum, and again we can PU Punch for the win. Gourgeist is next and our Shadow Claw cuts through it like smoky butter, and the final opponent is Mega Gardevoir. Another Shadow Claw takes that opponent down, giving us a win and the chance to enter the Hall of Fame. But there is the still small matter of one more fight before the end credits roll. We beat AZ easily enough, hitting a PU punch on Torkoal to boost our attack before the Lava Plume comes in and I don't want to get burned. I always wonder what will happen here if we lose this fight. I don't really consider him a main fight of the game. Remember my rule, if you don't get experience points for the fight, it doesn't count. Interesting rule, huh? We finish Torkoal with Earthquake, and then we take out both Sigilif and Golurk with Shadow Claw attacks to give us that win over the big man. Well, that was interesting. I had a real vision of the end game being pretty simple, but who'd have thought that being a glass cannon would have been something that cost us? Maybe I lacked foresight. I hope you enjoyed anyway. Thanks for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe away. It's great for the algorithms. I said my goal was 300 subs before the end of the year. Now, I did have a bit of a flurry towards the middle of December, but no idea come this point of release if we hit it or not. I think it was about the 265 mark when I wrote this and finished recording the video on December. It was definitely at that point when I was recording this audio. I don't know what it will be otherwise. But anyway, just a note from me, if you did subscribe at all in all the time of this channel, thank you so very much for your support during this time. 2023 was an interesting year, as I said throughout. I had happiness and heartbreak, but I like to think I made a few decent videos in this time. You might have noticed as I went through this video, there wasn't the usual what I did on the channel in the last few weeks segment, for probably obvious reasons. Let's talk about what 2024 might have in store. I have challenges planned through to the middle of May, so I know what is going to be coming. I do want to do more team challenges for sure. They bring another dimension to the idea of it. Also, I want to do my first ever Gen 7 challenge, and I've got that lined up for the end of April. First challenge of 2024 is going to be Pokemon Crystal with a single Dratini, so that's going to be in 2 weeks if all goes well. I do want to do more viewer submissions too. It was weird last year because I was doing themed hunts at the start of the year through till about June, so people were suggesting stuff and it didn't get picked up for ages because of that. But this year is going to be a bit more of a freestyle, like the back end of this year. Will I go back to 1 challenge a week? Probably not. If there is anything that you would like to see more of in challenges, be it team runs, be it specialist move runs, pipe up. That's what the comment section is for. What have I got lined up Let's Play wise? Well, as I said earlier, there are a few Legend of Zeldas that I want to go back to. There's a few Resident Evils that I want to go back to. 6 and 7, since they are about the only 2 I've never finished. I also did start downloading the Batman Arkham games again on Steam, and they're definitely something I want to do on the channel. It's been far too long since I played those. And I did mention this earlier in the year, but I do want to do team-themed playthroughs of the main games as well. But it's a timing thing at the moment. I need to work out how. I did recently have this mad idea of playing Pokemon Sword as a Team Magma Grunt recently, so I don't know where that came from at all, but hey, might do it. I think this video has gone on far too long, folks. So, as always, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please take care, have a happy new year, and I will see you next time. Bring on 2024, I will see you there. Ta-ta!